The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
If you really want to doge, this is how you doge. You don't vote for bad legislation that expands government. Thank you.
Now we're talking about taxpayer money, and we talk about accountability. It is their money. This isn't a government program we're actually spending on. We're actually giving it back to the people of Idaho.
There's other options for making our ballots more secure, such as using watermarks or putting holograms on the ballots.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
I asked the question rhetorically, if we gave them another $1 billion, they wouldn't be happy. Well, we've given them $2 more billion, and it's not enough.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
Other states like Texas and Florida have enacted similar laws to address illegal immigration, both locally and in their communities. And Idaho has the right to protect itself when the federal government has failed to do that.
COVID presented us with quite the enigma. We didn't really know what it was or what to do, but that is no excuse to violate the rights of the citizens of the state of Idaho.
I say vote no on this and let the teachers teach and quit bringing in coaches to teach the teachers to teach, and let's get education going again in Idaho.
I don't know what's coming after this current administration for the feds, and we need this law because our federal laws on immigration have failed.
Mr. President, I think it's incumbent upon us to allow parents to use their hard-earned dollars to provide what's best for their children.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
My concern is that the resilience of Idahoans who believe in self-reliance and self-responsibility will be eroded.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Yeah, watch it.
Well, good morning, folks. Welcome back to Idaho Signal. We absolutely appreciate you joining this program. It's signal callers like you out there that help shape and preserve this free state of Idaho. My name is Matt Edwards, and I want to get started with the Idaho Supreme Court. They're set to hear arguments this Friday on a lawsuit trying to torpedo the hard-won school choice tax credit. That's House Bill 93 from last year, if you recall. And let's talk about why this fight matters and why the old guard elites are so desperate to kill it. Now, if you remember H93, it was passed just a year ago, and it went into effect this year. It gives parents a refundable tax credit of up to $5,000 per child for non-public school or homeschool expenses. It's really a huge, huge game changer for families who are fed up with one-size-fits-all public education. But now there's a coalition of whiners out there, including the teachers' unions, some school districts, and even a sitting Republican legislator, that's Representative Stephanie Mickelson, who voted against it. They're suing to declare the whole thing unconstitutional. Mickelson, if you recall, is the potato queen from Idaho Falls who's been caught employing a wife-beating meth addict immigrant worker on her farm without batting an eye. But of course, that's stories for another time. But she apparently draws the line at giving parents a real choice. Conservatives across Idaho are calling it straight up lawfare after the bill passed 62-43 overall. And everyday families who just want what's best for their children are united. Meanwhile, the big education cartel are clutching their pearls because their monopoly's cracking. But let's make the economic case crystal clear, because the left's freakout isn't about the kids. It's about the cash and control. Idaho's constitution obligates the state to provide a general, uniform, and thorough system of public schools, meaning the state has promised to foot the bill for educating every single child in Idaho. Every child. If you want to put your child in public school, that child will get spent on. It will be funded. The money will be there, guaranteed. They have to spend money on your child if you put them in the school system. So per pupil spending in our public school system right now is about $9,300, according to state data and reports from other watchdog groups. So when a parent pulls their kid out and then just uses maybe up to $5,000 in credit for private or homeschool options, the state is actually saving $4,300 per child. So that's real money that's staying inside the general fund, potentially freeing up more for public schools that actually need it. The public education advocates should be doing cartwheels. There's more dollars per remaining student. But no, they're in full meltdown mode because fewer kids in public schools means less overall funding flowing to their bloated administrative empires, flowing to the teachers' unions. Think about it. Unions thrive on the dues from a massive teacher workforce. And their power shrinks too if you shrink the system. And then don't get me started on the indoctrination angle, because the big ed lobby hates losing their captive audience to schools that might actually teach critical thinking instead of whatever woke nonsense is trendy this week. This isn't freedom, it's tyranny. And if we the people are the government and we've committed to educating all kids, forcing them into one captured system occupied by the left with its DEI mandates and cultural rot is straight up authoritarian. And Idaho's universal public schools have become echo chambers, and conservatives are finally taking a stand with real choice. And Mickelson and her cronies, they can sue all they want. All it's doing is exposing how terrified they are of actually empowering parents. Parents, again, that she believes are chomping at the bit to defraud the system with zero accountability. The contempt she has for everyday parents is appalling. We heard from Representative Kyle Harris yesterday about the absolute lack of accountability with your tax dollars in the school system. But Mickelson just digs in. She sues her own colleagues because she was on the losing side of a proper vote from the people's representatives. And the court better see through this nonsense on Friday, or we'll keep fighting until every Idaho family gets the education that their kids deserve. You must stay vigilant, folks. Do not back down. And one person I know who's not backing down with their organization is Chris Cargill of the Mountain State Policy Center, who released an article this week on some of the finer, about 6 points to look out for in this Supreme Court case. Chris joins us now. He's on the road, headed out to Pocatello. Chris, hopefully you can hear me. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah. So walk us through this article, because this was fantastic. It was a great sort of appetizer for what we should expect to hear the arguments on the state side going into this if they defend it properly. Walk us through this article.
So before I do, Matt, let me just give you and your viewers a little bit of breaking news.
Sure.
And that is we just got updated numbers from the State Tax Commission, and 4,650 families, so 4,650 families have now signed up for the tax credit, which equals about 7,300 students. And so that is enormous demand. Obviously, it just opened up last Friday. And so the number of families participating already in this is overwhelming. And as you know, Matt, the application window stays open until March 15th. And so you could really potentially see 10 to 20,000 families participating in this particular program.
Wow, that's incredible news. And like you said, the window just opened 5, 6, 7 days ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so that's a great number. Okay, so the appetite is there. How do we defend this thing in court?
Right. So as you mentioned, we put up a post on our website, mountainstatespolicy.org, that talked about the 6 things to watch in the court hearing. And so just a couple of notes. You already mentioned that obviously it's the teachers union that's suing one of the local school districts, the Moscow School District, that kind of got roped into this, and then one of the state's representatives as well. And to our surprise, they're not really suing on the things that they warned they would be suing on on about a year ago. They're actually suing on some what I would call some shaky legal ground. So let's talk about the things that they're not suing on. They originally said that this was a violation of the Blaine Amendment, that this was a violation of the state constitution in that way, and that they said they were going to sue on that particular point. If you read through the brief that they sent in, Matt, there's not one mention of the Blaine Amendment, not one. And so I think they've kind of given up on that particular point because they know that they would lose on that particular point. Instead, what they're suing on is basically what you mentioned in your preview, and that was this notion that what the state constitution says only provides for public schools and nothing else. And unfortunately, that is not what the state constitution says. That's what they're claiming. But the state constitution makes very clear that what they're referring to is the floor. In other words, that the legislature and the state of Washington have, or excuse me, the state of Idaho, all states really have this particular provision in them. But that the state of Idaho has this floor that says that it will provide a uniform, thorough public school system. It doesn't say it will provide only a uniform, thorough public school system. It says it will provide a uniform, thorough public school system. That does not prevent the legislature from putting anything on top of that. They're also, Matt, as you know, in the case, trying to claim that because they don't know necessarily what a family is going to do with this particular money, and because they don't like what a family could potentially do with this particular money, that somehow that makes this unconstitutional. I will tell you, Matt, if that argument gets any standing from the state Supreme Court, basically everything else that the state of Idaho does could be called into question as well. I mean, for instance, we've talked about the grocery tax credit. So what about if the state decided that it was going to increase or decrease the grocery tax credit? If the legislature is going to be prevented from doing this based on where that money could be spent, you run the risk of basically shooting down all of those other tax credits that are also on the books in the state of Idaho. So it is a really nefarious argument that they're making in this particular case.
Yeah, I mean that's such a huge point there. I mean, telling people what they can and can't do with the money that the state is giving back to them is a shaky ground to stand on. I want to go back to something you mentioned about the religious aspect. The Blaine Amendment not being necessarily used directly in this case, but a lot of the arguments that we see out there is the left using the term school vouchers, and school vouchers shouldn't be going to private schools. If everybody can recall, this is why this whole system, this whole program was not run through the education committee. It was run through the tax committee. So can you give us a little bit of a difference you see here between what typically is known as a school voucher versus just allowing parents to take some of their own money and use it towards education?
Yeah, and they know that it's not a voucher. They're using that particular term to try to scare people. Why? Because they have polling that shows that if you call something a voucher, it all of a sudden loses a bunch of support. A voucher, as you know, Matt, is defined very specifically. It is the equivalent of the state sending a check to your private religious school to cover the tuition of that private religious school. That is a voucher. The state directly issuing a check to pick your religious school, St. Mary Catholic School, or whatever school that you might be thinking of. That is not what this does. This actually gives parents the opportunity to take a tax credit for not only private school tuition, but also tutoring, educational expenses, transportation, things that are outside of the public school system. And then the parents get to allocate that money to their educational expenses. So there's a big difference between the two of these. If the state were writing a check directly to a private school, then you might have a different type of argument here. But that's not what they're doing in this particular case, and therefore it is not a voucher. And anyone who says it is a voucher is trying to either mislead or is trying to purposely obfuscate what this particular argument is all about, because they know full well that this is not a voucher. A tax credit is not a voucher, but unfortunately they're using that argument to try to scare people.
Yeah, very good. Okay, I'm glad you were able to separate the two there for us. The other thing we hear is accountability. Like I mentioned at the top, Representative Harris and a lot of people in JFAC, a lot of people who are looking at the finances now of the state are wondering, who's being held accountable when the money fails to either deliver on the standards promised or to just find itself in another program or not being used properly. And we hear this all the time from folks like Mickelson and such that oh, well, who's holding the parents accountable? And I don't know. I find that a little bit offensive because the biggest advocate for children are their parents.
Right.
What is your analysis and data say when it comes to accountability?
100%. It's the parents. The parents want to get what is the best education option for their children. And, I could flip that argument right around and say, well, what's the accountability for the public school system? We continue to put more money into the public school system, even when the results show that only about a third are meeting standards or are proficient in certain subject areas. So what is the accountability there? And the answer is there is no accountability. The accountability is in the public school system right now, unfortunately, is, you didn't meet your standards. Okay, let us give you more money. Well, that's not necessarily accountability either. So I would much rather put the accountability in the hands of the parents and let the parents figure out what is the best option for their kids. That's not an indictment of the teachers in the public school system. It's just a fact that even though our results keep diminishing, not only here in Idaho, but across the country as well, we keep pouring more and more and more money in. And I think most parents would tell you that that's not the best way to go.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, so give us your best assessment. What do you think happens on Friday? How do you think the case is going to fall out?
Well, as I mentioned, I'd be very surprised. The case that the petitioners brought is very, very weak, in my opinion. I am not a lawyer, but I've had a bunch of lawyers look at it, and I've also studied this issue for the past 20 years. So I can usually determine whether it is a good case or a poor case. And I would just say my analysis is that this case is very poor. That being said, I think there is a lot of lobbying, so to speak, that the teachers union and others do to try to convince the Supreme Court and others that this is somehow unpopular. I think the numbers show that that is not the case. The numbers show...
Oh, we lost connection. We'll see if we can jump back in here. It was a good... I feel like he was going to be positive about it. Okay, well, we must have lost Chris. There must have been some sort of wave coming through the road there, so we lost him. But here is their website. It's let's throw up the website up on the bottom too. Oh, is he back?
Can you hear me, Matt?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead. We lost you for a bit there. Go ahead and wrap it up.
Well, I can't hear you, but I'll just wrap it up and say, looks like you're nodding yes. I'll just wrap it up and say, I think the chances that this succeeds from the petitioner's point of view is probably very, very small. We'll be in the courtroom on Friday, and we'll keep everyone updated on mountainstatespolicy.org.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Matt.
We'll talk to you soon. All right. Okay, very good. Yes, mountainstatepolicy.org is where you can find them and keep track of their analysis. They put out some good white papers. They've been really bullish on this issue of school choice, and we appreciate the work that Chris and his team does over there on that. Okay, very good. Godspeed to him as he travels on the road. I have the case in front of me here, and I just wanted to throw up one thing here that we were talking about, which is what Chris talked about too. Guys, if you throw up the petition here, the lawsuit on page 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth page in, if you count the first as the first page, number 10 here says, and this is one of their claims in number 10. It says that the program violates Article 9, Section 1 of the Idaho Constitution and Idaho's public purpose doctrine by using public taxpayer funds to benefit private education without public accountability or government oversight outside of a single, uniform, thorough, and free public school system. The legislator is required to establish and maintain and advance rather than public in purpose. So, like Chris said, originally it sounded like they were gonna try to attempt to use the Blaine Amendment, which is actually Article 9, Section 5. But here they're just going to base it on the fact that anything outside of this uniform, thorough, and free public school system is verboten. So I think he explained it easily there that the Constitution just lays out that we should at least have this floor, this base of a public free school system, and that nothing is prohibiting the state from assisting and supporting schools and supporting education and supporting parents who do not want to partake in that free public school system. So that is in the lawsuit there. It's good to see that that article will cover a bunch of those things. So I highly recommend heading over to that article. Okay, real quick, before we move on here, I have a because this morning in JFAC they were Debbie Critchfield was there, the superintendent of education, and she was there presenting some of her case for funding, and so we have a bunch of clips to get through with that, and we'll have Brian Ullman hopefully at the top of the hour for that part. But first, the AmericanSmokeCompany.com. AmericanSmokeCompany.com is your place for smoked salts. What are smoked salts? I'm so glad you asked. They're right here. I've got them. This is the cherry salt, and if you open it up, oh man, that is so good. So this cherry salt, it doesn't taste like cherries. It's made with cherry wood. It's smoked with cherry wood. This particular batch smoked for 8 hours. They take Pacific Ocean sea salt, a nice, coarse, very coarse sea salt, and they smoke it for 8 hours. This one here with cherry wood. And it has a nice full-bodied flavor. You can see on the chart there, cherry wood is down at the bottom. The cherry salt is the most smoke, the most full-bodied. And you just put this on when you don't want to wait, 15 hours for your brisket. You don't want to wait, 6-7 hours for your ribs or anything. Throw this on here. Throw this on your meat. Just let it sit. Let it sit in the refrigerator. Let that stuff break down into the meat. And you can throw it on your burgers. You can throw it on your veggies. I do it on my eggs every morning. It's great stuff. AmericanSmokeCo.com is where you're going to find it. Order yourself a batch. We'll be right back right after this.
And I think people really think that what's good for Micron is good for Idaho. What's good for Albertsons is good for Idaho. Especially when you get into politics, you end up spending a lot of time with lobbyists, with business leaders, with the rich and powerful donors. I think it does become a bit of a bubble.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among a world silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
Okay, welcome back. What's interesting? I love lawsuits. I love reading the lawsuits. I love listening to the arguments in the Supreme Court and other courts when you can get it. When you can get a hold of them. Way more interesting sometimes than what's on television. But when I go through this lawsuit and I read the claim, because here's bring up that first page again. Here is the folks who are suing. It's the committee, and they call themselves the Committee to Protect and Preserve the Idaho Constitution, Inc. And it's made up of Mormon Women for Ethical Government, the School District number 281, Latah County, I believe that's Moscow, the Idaho Education Association, Jerry Evans, Marta Hernandez, Stephanie Mickelson, Alexis Morgan on behalf of her and her minor children, and Christine Anderson on behalf of herself and her minor children. They each in the foregoing individually have private attorneys, and they petition against the state of Idaho, acting by and through the Idaho State Tax Commission. So that is who is suing here. And I want to kind of go through and just highlight for you and read a couple of these because they each have to have a specific complaint. And I want you to hear what their complaint is and see and listen to their complaint and then think about all of the things that government funds that you might be able to use the same argument for. Petitioner, let's see here. Petitioner, this one, I don't think I've read this one to myself yet. So let me read. Let's read this one together. Petitioner, this is number 21. Petitioner Jerry Evans is a state citizen and taxpayer, resident of Ada County, and the Idaho State Superintendent of Public Instruction from 1979 until 1995. It goes on to say he's particularly knowledgeable on educational issues throughout the state. And it moves on to say Petitioner Evans is opposed to the program based on its blatant violation of the Idaho Constitution by publicly funding disparate education system outside the bounds of the Idaho Constitution's educational mandates for providing a general, uniform, and thorough public education system open to all children across the state. Placing the administration of the program under the Tax Commission diminishes the role of the Board of Education and the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. And again, this is where I think that the arguments just get so weak. I'm not a lawyer, but I read that argument and I say, well, this is the reason why it's a tax credit, because parents are spending money on education and they are being offered a tax credit if they're not using the state's funded education. Why people don't understand that this is actually saving the state money because those kids would be going into the public school. Petitioner Marta Hernandez is a state citizen and taxpayer, a resident of Cassia County, and a licensed educator teaching both English speaking and bilingual students in Cassia County. She has been a teacher for 30 years and says that she will be directly impacted by the program as it will create a greater burden on public schools, including her school, as students are incentivized to leave public schools. So it's a burden on her that this program is going to incentivize children to leave the school. I don't know if that's the incentive is to leave. If this is incentivizing children to leave the school, when the incentive is that you have a terrible product in a lot of these schools. I'm not putting that all on Ms. Hernandez here, but she is saying she's bringing a lawsuit saying that she is going to be burdened. She's going to be burdened by children leaving the school, which would in turn decrease funding for public schools and make it increasingly difficult to retain qualified teachers, maintain reasonable class sizes, and offer comprehensive educational programs. They say she has standing to bring this claim due to the harm the public schools will result in from the program that will directly impact her line of work. So again, like the mental gymnastics, you have to say you're actually bringing a lawsuit saying it's going to make my job harder. So by allowing parents to take their kids out of school and go to another school, This is what's in the lawsuit, folks. This is what's in the lawsuit. Petitioner Stephanie Mickelson. She's a state citizen and a taxpayer and a resident of Bonneville County. She also represents in the Idaho House of Representatives and is a grandmother to 18 grandchildren, 12 of whom attend public schools. She claims here she's representing the citizens of District 32, which encompasses 2 public school districts. It goes on to say that she strongly believes she voted against the program. So she's on record even here saying she voted against the program because she strongly believes that religious teaching of any faith should not be financed or subsidized with public money under Article 9, Section 5. And the program does not adequately support the school districts and constituents within District 32A. So unless she updated her claim here, Mickelson is the only one claiming that the Blaine Amendment, that this program violates the Blaine Amendment, which if you've watched our special and you've seen our episodes on this, we know is absolutely false. Absolutely false, because if the state is providing a public benefit to everybody through a tax credit, and it can go to anything within the realm of education, you cannot discriminate against those who would choose to use the money for a religious school. That has been knocked down time and again. So here's a perfect example of not only did she lose in the House and lose in the Senate, and Brad Little, the governor, signed this into law, she got her panties in a bunch and says, I'm going to sue the state and use the Blaine Amendment in my argument. How this person is still, how you vote for this person out there in District 32 is beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. I mean, you have to defend your vote now. You need to come to me and defend your vote. I don't understand this. I just don't. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm trying to strike a pleasant tone here, but I'm asking the hard questions that you guys don't seem to care about asking. And you need to ask about this because she's also the one. Do we have that clip of her from a couple years ago? We have this clip here when she was in when she was at a some sort of function. They were talking about some sort of education. They were talking about educational school choice and all this stuff. And she asked this question during the presentation. Let's roll it.
So my question is about homeschooling and some of the impact there. Does a homeschool parent just say, I'm homeschooling my child, no requirements beyond that? And what if they homeschool them for, 2 or 3 weeks, take the tax credit and dump them into the public school system? And then what are the outcomes for kids that have been in the homeschool system as far as being functional adults?
Okay. 2 things there. One, she's claiming that parents are just going to take the tax credit and then, quote, dump their children into public schools. Like, come on. How offensive is that remark? Are you offended by that? If you're somebody who's going to take advantage of this? I mean, that's awful. What a way to phrase it, right? That you're a fraudster. You're going to take the money and then, quote, dump your children back into public school. And then secondly, with the homeschool aspect, saying, what's the guarantee? What'd she say? What is the guarantee that these kids are going to be functional in society? I mean, what dinosaur age is she coming from? I mean, that's not even dinosaur age. That's just like full on elitism to think to say those things. It's so offensive, and she gets away with it. And here's again, we can talk about this another time. Somebody who runs a potato farming business who brought back onto staff somebody who was arrested for beating their wife and had methamphetamine on them, and got a sweetheart deal through the Bonneville County's prosecutor's office, and then goes back to work on her farm. I'm sorry to shift this topic over to that, but it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. And yet people rally around her, and I don't get it. I absolutely don't get it. You talk about the corruption that goes on in Congress. You scream about all the things that are up there. You paint people up who are in Congress as like the most evil people ever, and some of them are. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but when it's happening in your own backyard, you turn a blind eye. This is an election year, folks. And as far as I know, she's running for re-election. She thinks none of this matters. Well, if it matters to you, then you need to speak up and say something about it. I know this matters to my good friend Brian Allman, and I think he's with us here. Let's bring him on and have give me a little bit of a cool down here. Brian, welcome to the program. We want to get into JFAC in a little bit, but I want to hear your comments on this case that's coming up in the Supreme Court. And we've talked about Mickelson in the past, but give us your take.
Well, I've just been listening to your rant and the clips and everything, and I keep thinking the absolute entitlement, the chutzpah of people to say, well, you know, if you're going to take a tax credit and go do a different option for school, you know, you're not allowed to do that. I am offended. I am going to sue. And especially for a state representative who was on the losing side of that vote and who said things like that, obviously she's doesn't think much of homeschool students. I wonder what she thinks of private school students. Maybe it's the same thing. You know, I can't really add much more to what you've said and what Chris has said. I don't see how the law says that this is not constitutional. This is not legal. This is consider other tax credits. There's a lot of tax credits out there that people can take. Right here in Idaho, we have a grocery tax credit. It says that for every person in your home, man, woman, child, you can take, what is it going to be, $150 now off your taxes. And that's refundable, which means some families who don't spend that much in grocery just will actually get more from the government. You can debate whether that's right or not, but that's the way it is. And I don't see anybody coming out there and saying, well, we need accountability for this grocery tax credit. We need to make sure that these families are not feeding their children bad stuff because, we can't trust families to choose good food for their children with their own money. That would be absurd. And yet that's the exact argument we're hearing from these people who are suing to overturn the parental choice tax credit.
Yeah, well, I suspect Cargill was optimistic about how the court might come down on this, but something there, I don't know. There's something out there that just kind of feels like with this many people, these many petitioners, and this much pushback that we're seeing that. And who makes up the courts? I don't know the history of all these judges and everything, but I just wouldn't be surprised if we find this thing going the wrong way and then the whole program stops or it gets put on there's an injunction filed and we have to stop it. I mean, that number today that Chris announced, 4,650 families have already applied. And that equates to about 7,300 students that are going to be getting assistance in this. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, and Chris said that there's propaganda going on all sides to try and influence the judges, or at least influence the political environment that the judges are going to be operating in. I'm not going to imply that they're susceptible to that. I mean, they're human beings, so I think if they follow the law, then it's clear cut. But obviously, there's always more considerations. However, that works both ways too. You have all the teachers unions and the plaintiffs are putting out this information trying to say, oh, this is awful, this is terrible. But then, thousands of Idaho families have already signed up for this program. They're planning out the next year based on this. Is the court really going to just pull the rug out from under all those people? I hope not.
I hope not. I hope not either. Okay, well, we'll keep tabs on that. I'm sure we will too. I hear they stream these things, so if it's streaming, we might be able to carry it.
In Idaho in session, the same place where you go to watch the legislature, there's an option to go watch the court, and that's at 9 o'clock Mountain Time on Friday morning. I plan to be there in person if possible. It's probably going to be crowded, so we'll see if I get in. We'll see what happens.
All right, good. Well, we'll turn to you for the news on that. Watch his Twitter thread. I'm sure you'll be live tweeting. Okay, let's move on here to this morning at JFAC. Speaking of education again, Debbie Critchfield was in the room in the JFAC. That's a Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee. Basically pitching her budget, pitching her department on what's next for them. And there were some tough questions. I mean, I think we're gonna see some tough questioning and pushback on some of these things. One of the interesting moments happened between Representative Kyle Harris when asking about some particular funding that I think he said they didn't approve a year before, and now here they are trying to ask for it or at least move money around to get it funded again. Let's watch this clip. We'll get a reaction.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you clarifying that career ready $29 million. That was actually very helpful. On that topic, I'm glad you brought up the legislation from last year's House Bill 291 that asked for $3 million in an appropriation for the High Needs Fund, and that bill did die in the Senate. So the legislature denied that request essentially through legislation. So I was a little surprised to see the ask here in this book with an additional $2 million attached to it. Being on education last year, I have a bit of an advantage than some of the other members in this room here, as I was privy to all the debate and discussion that happened around that piece of legislation. And I'm curious as to why we are not trying to address the current spending issues we have within the high needs special ed funding that we're already using, where some of that money is going to housing, according to superintendents across the state that testified to that in committee. So instead of trying to shift funds around, why are we not trying to fix the spending issues we have when we're funding things that education should not be funding in the first place?
Mr. Chair, Representative, I'll try to remember some of the points as you went through. Our return to this issue or to this legislation or policy is to reflect the fact that I initially had in my first budget request a $50 million line item for our special education issues and needs, representing half of what our districts are looking at, what that shortfall is. And so going back to our districts to say, we're taking $50 million off as a request, we know that the problem is still there. What kind of a bridge can we build as a one-time bridge until we can get to the larger issue, which is addressing the funding distribution, how we are funding all of our students? I am first in line to say that it isn't working. And in the meantime, what can we do that can help offset some of those costs so that they're not going back into the community, so that they're not taking from their general fund? I'm not aware of the housing comment, but I do know that going back to housing issues, that is a number one for getting teachers and keeping teachers into areas around the state. And so some of our districts have to use some sort of bonuses so that they can get teachers in to areas to help offset some of the rising housing costs. So that one I'm not entirely sure of, but circling back to the point of why we're coming back at this, simply put, the problem is still there, and until we have a larger fix, we've got to have something to help offset some of those costs related to special ed.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Follow up.
Just to clarify, I wasn't referring to teacher housing, I was referring to student housing. So we have these high needs students, some of which are, they get over $100,000 a year per student is what we're spending on some of these kids. And included in that $100,000 plus price tag is their housing. So we're taking special needs money and paying for their housing, essentially, is what was testified to by superintendents in committee last year.
Mr. Chair, Representative, when a student qualifies for special education services, whatever is determined in that review and in that evaluation to meet the requirements of a fair and equal education, the district must provide, and they must provide that first. And so I don't know and can't speak to a very specific case, and so I never want to say never and always, because I don't know the specific case. But if there was something specific in the IEP that said the school must do these things, then it would be on the school to take care of that. Whether we agree with it or not, the federal government says you must address those issues.
Oh, the strings attached to federal money, right, Brian? I mean, that's the thing. $100,000 for housing for these students? That's what we're doing?
Apparently. I don't know the details, like Superintendent Critchfield, I don't know the specific case there. While she was talking, I was looking up the House Bill 291 from last year. It passed the House by one vote, failed in the Senate by one vote. It would have appropriated additional money for high needs students. And I'm looking at the definitions here. Eligible costs include a ton of things. Nursing, interpreting, speech therapy, occupational therapy, extended school year services, personal care, specialized equipment. Does not include routine classroom costs. I don't see anything about housing in there. But it says high needs student. It means a student with a disability whose individualized education program is IEP. Costs exceed $15,000. So as I understand it, from what everyone is saying here, you've got the federal government says that if you're taking our money, then you have to go by our rules. And one of those rules is that if you have a student with a high needs student, whatever that might be, wherever on the spectrum that might be, if they have this IEP, this individual educational program, then you have to pay for it. And what it sounds like what Superintendent Critchfield is trying to do is to reimburse the local districts and make sure that they're not carrying all of that bill. Whereas I would say the problem is, in the federal funding in the first place and those strings, like you said. So how do we get to the root cause here? Root cause.
That's what they're trying to do, I guess. But I mean, this is the web that we've gotten ourselves into when especially when you're dealing with federal grants and federal money taking care of special needs or high needs kids, whatever the new term is.
The government's creating problems, and then
yes,
the only way to solve those problems, according to the government, is to give the government more money.
Yes, exactly.
And it's just a vicious cycle.
Every time we saw it, we talked about that with the childcare regulations and all of that, childcare centers and such. Okay, there was another question there from Representative Chris Bruce. Let's watch a little bit of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Superintendent, for being here. I just kind of want to take a step back. So can you please identify which programs within public support and financing are constitutionally or statutory required versus discretionary?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I can. I don't know if you're, and I'm going to use my cheat sheet here, but if you're looking at the public schools support program sheet, it's 1 through 16. Those are all ones where we put in the numbers based on what we think, and then the statute will direct actually how much. And sometimes it doesn't, maybe all of it doesn't go out. It's really dependent on who's in the schools and what's happening in the classrooms.
Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up.
Yes.
And then also, what functions in this budget directly support state operations and which are primarily grant-making or pass-through activities? Can you identify those?
Mr. Chair, I didn't hear the very first part of your question. I apologize.
What functions in this budget directly support state operations and which are primarily grant-making and or pass-through activities?
Mr. Chair and Representative, all of them support the operations. You've got your transportation for busing, your salaries. I guess, is there a more specific part to that question? I apologize.
Yeah, Representative Bruce, you can clarify if you.
I guess it would be easier if you just if we kind of knew that any of this budget that we're just using those funds to either grant funds to other places or if they're just pass-through activities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative, for the clarification. As I take a look over this, I cannot see for public schools where they are passing on to something else outside of some of our online schools who have contracts with providers who come in and provide curriculum for our online students. For our brick and mortar schools, the dollars that they're getting, they are using for the operations of their schools.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up if possible.
Follow-up.
We heard from members of higher education earlier, actually I believe it was yesterday, and we talked about some of the classes that they're having to provide for students who are entering college, providing more remedial education to get them up to high school level. I know we have some high schools or some school districts that have a zero-fail policy. What are your thoughts about recouping some of those funds from districts who pass kids through to college, but yet then they're spending education dollars to bring them up to high school level to recoup those?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Representative, I heard the discussion and question yesterday, so it gave me the advantage to think about what my answer would be if I was asked today. I think that would be a challenging dot to connect, and here's why I say that. All of our institutions and nationally, they set their own admission requirements. If you take this test, we believe you are now ready to come here. And so, I mean, if we want to take a look at advising or updating or revising or updating
Brian,
admission.
great questions from Representative Bruce there, but this answer here to this question, you have students who are entering college, and the college is now having to develop curriculum and bring on whatever they need to do in order to bring the child up to that remedial level that they should have graduated with. And you're saying we can't find out where that child went to school, where that student went to school, and say, hey, school, you failed. You passed along somebody who should not be in college yet. I mean, what a great question. And that's why I applaud these folks that are on there, because hopefully we'll get something out of this. I mean, you have to unveil it before you do something about it, right? So now here's the unveiling. Well, I mean, what do you think about this one particular point right here?
I feel like it's the thread. You start pulling on it, and it starts unraveling this massive tapestry here, because you have two problems inherent in Representative Bruce's question there. One is that schools are graduating students who cannot do math, cannot read, are not prepared for college. But then two, you have colleges are enrolling students who are not prepared for college. Why is that? Why do we just assume that everyone who graduates high school needs to then go on to college? What happens to just going and getting a good job? I mean, not that they'd necessarily be prepared for that either. But when the colleges are subsidized to the extent that they are, with both private scholarships, but also government grants and scholarships that are undischargeable in bankruptcy, then they're not taking on any risk by taking on these students. They're not having to, they get more money to give them remedial classes. So the colleges are winning, the high schools are winning, because they don't have to actually really make sure that their graduates know what they're doing. The only ones who are losing are these students who are woefully unprepared for the real world.
And the taxpayer who's funding.
Of course, the taxpayers who foot the bill for everything, the forgotten man.
Yeah, exactly. And Sierra here says because it helps their graduation rates. Of course, yeah.
That's a problem. I remember hearing stories, listening to stories about the Vietnam War. John Kennedy had appointed, his name's escaping me now. It was a guy from Ford who figured out how to do efficiency and reporting and organization. He appointed him McNamara, that's right, appointed him defense secretary. And so he ends up having to run the Vietnam War when that starts. And so he's trying to run it like a factory and make it efficient. And so he's trying to get reports. Okay, how many people did we kill today? How many people of ours did die today? And at every level, those numbers are inflated because everybody wants to look good. Everybody wants their section to be, making sure it's meeting requirements. And so by the time you get to the top, you have no idea what is actually true. You're just going on data that's been completely twisted and distorted. And I think the same thing's happening here, like Sierra said there. We say, well, we want graduation rates to be higher because that is a mark of success of a school. So the hard way is to actually teach the students, get rid of all the woke nonsense and actually give them an education and focus on what matters. But then, on the other hand, the easy way is to just say, well, we'll just graduate more people.
Yeah, lower the standards, push everybody through.
Number go up.
Yes. Okay, final clip here. Josh Tanner himself, representing the co-chair of JFAC, started talking about how people are fleeing Boise because of high property taxes, which kind of had a response from Debbie Critchfield, but then it kind of drew the ruffled the feathers of Senator Wintrow, the Democrat from Boise, and it provoked this exchange. Let's watch a little bit of this.
We look at all the trends of what Idaho is now, who's moving into the state, who's coming into the schools. That I share that to explain and describe how we get to some of these estimates. Then we get into school and we see where
one thing though. You also missed the city of Boise's massive property tax. I know I've talked to multiple families that are leaving the city of Boise trying to move out west towards West Ada just because of what the city of Boise and the property tax aspect has done to them.
There's no question that those sorts of changes are influencing decisions. And to your point, we are seeing, particularly here in the Treasure Valley, families moving more west. We're seeing growth in Middleton and Kuna and shifting of populations. I also want to share as part of the overall support unit, and this gets into our population growth trends, that as we see a decline in actual just bodies going into schools, we're also seeing more charter schools come online. Charter schools are funded with a different divisor. And so you will see two things happening. You are going to see shifts, and you'll see places growing, places reducing, more charter schools coming online around the state, particularly here in the Treasure Valley, will be funded. Those students are funded at a different level, and so they're generating more support units by virtue of the type of school that they are. Because Idaho does distinguish on the divisor of how we're funding schools. And there's a larger conversation of how we're funding schools still to be had, and I'm not going to get into that now. But I share that as the overall, or hopefully a more comprehensive picture of how we get to these numbers. And as we continue to look at trends and see families taking advantage of other options. And here in the Treasure Valley, you see some that want a smaller environment for their child, so they're picking charter. So there's a lot of reasons and a lot of information out there, but wanted to share those. I'm happy to stop and wait after the couple of slides, or would you like me to?
Senator Winthrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for a little clarification, since that door was opened. Boise School District certainly did do some increases we'll see in our property taxes, but I think we have to go back to House Bill 292, where Boise City was intentionally capped, and West Ada was given disproportionate favor and got the lion's share of the ability then to draw down some of those levies and bonds. So Boise City schools have been put into a corner. And it is not fair to our constituents and our taxpayers at all.
Was that for me? I can't. Senator Ordingle-King.
Woo, like that stuff, you know, talking through each other, right? Talking at each other, but through the others. You got some, you're in this neck of the woods, Brian. What's your take?
So there's a couple different factors here. Yes, Boise School District, their school board raised their property taxes 18%, unilaterally, by the way. Boise School District actually predates the state of Idaho. So their charter is grandfathered in and is not subject to state law. The legislature hasn't been able to go in and just change the way that they operate. That's why they have election days for school trustees in Boise on a very odd day. It's like the Tuesday after Labor Day in September. But also it allows them to raise taxes without a vote of the people, which honestly is terrible. That's the fundamental idea of taxation without representation. But in any case, they raise taxes a lot. And one of the reasons, as Senator Wintrow pointed out, is because there's this state property tax relief fund that has been passed over the last couple of years that shifts some of the general fund revenue into property taxes by not going directly to homeowners. They do that too, but also going to pay off school bonds and levies. And West Ada, I brought it up here, received $33.4 million from that fund this past year, whereas Boise received $18.9 million. Now that's based on attendance. West Ada has a much greater attendance, or not much greater, but a greater attendance than Boise. I live in the West Ada School District. On my property tax bill, the school district property taxes went almost to zero. It's like $5 or something ridiculously low because they haven't raised taxes. They actually failed their last levy, and they received all that from the state property tax relief fund. Now, part of the problem, though, is that Boise is apparently losing students. I'm just now starting to look into this, so I don't have anything definitive yet, but they published something on their website called an open enrollment report to show how much space they have in each of their schools and each of their grades in case people from other districts want to send their children there. Idaho is an open enrollment state. You don't have to send your child to the district you live in, so long as there's room and you take care of the transportation, presumably. According to that open enrollment report, the number of space, the vacancy in the Boise School District has been increasing dramatically just over the past few years. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit more, get some numbers, but it seems like Representative Tanner is right. People are leaving the Boise School District for whatever reason, property taxes or who knows what else. I mean, obviously the Boise School District has been involved in some very high profile sexual abuse cases and lawsuits. They had to pay out a bunch of money for just a few months ago. And of course, all the woke nonsense. West Ada has been really trying to tamp down on that, whereas Boise is, double.
Brian, the city waves the pride flag. The city is conquered. So if you're not for that, then you leave. I mean, we have seen people flee Washington, California, Oregon for all this woke stuff and all the high taxes and all that sort of jazz. So it doesn't surprise me that if you're living in Boise and all these things are happening, just as you outlaid, and you've got the flag flying everywhere, the pride flag flying everywhere, then all you have to do is, move a few blocks, move a few miles, sell your house here and refinance or do something down the road. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer if you're somebody who cherishes your family and your kids' future. So it's not surprising at all. It's the same reason why it's not surprising why people are taking advantage of this the school tax credit thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, approximately 7,300 students now are going to be are going to have that here. We got a comment from Ed. If a family has 2 children and a net state tax liability of $7,500, does the state give the family a total tax credit of $15,000, thus sending the family a refund of $7,500 more than their total tax liability? This is an argument that I say, well, you don't pay that much in taxes. How can you claim a tax credit if you don't even pay that much in taxes to send your for your child to go to school? But I mean, look, Ed, the state is paying $9,300 per student, regardless of how many taxes that you pay into the system. It's all money that goes into a pot and then to the general fund, and then it's allocated. So the state is already paying $9,300 per student, regardless of how many taxes you pay. And that's not free. Going to public school is not free. It's costing taxpayers money. So this is actually saving taxpayer money. If you only spend $3,000 per year on your child for homeschooling, or $1,200, that's all you can claim, right? So this argument is moot. Is moot, I say. Is moot.
It's easy to call something free money when you're not the one paying it and you're not seeing the money change hands. It's all going on behind the scenes. You just send your child to school and they get an education or not, depending on where they are. And you never see the actual costs. Whereas if you're sending your child to private school or buying materials for homeschooling or any of those things, you do see the cost because they're coming out of your bank account. And yeah, it is a refundable tax credit so that families can get more than they actually paid. But on the other hand, so is the grocery tax credit, so is the child tax credit. That's, as a society, that's how we've decided to do some things. And it is, like you said, a direct reimbursement. You can't just claim $5,000 based on, the fact that you sent your child to private school for $1,500. You can only claim up to what you spent.
Very correct. Very correct. All right, Brian, where can people follow you and keep tabs on your work?
All right, at Brian Ullman on X, gemstatechronicle.com. Go there, read it, subscribe, check out Idaho Insider, profiles of all your legislators, all sorts of fun information. Looking ahead over these next few days, there's more bills being introduced. I'm going to be back at the Capitol this afternoon. The conformity bill, big news is going to hopefully come in the next couple of days. We'll see how that works out.
Very good, Brian. Well, we'll see you then. We'll check back in with you, especially on that Supreme Court case coming up in Idaho. Very good.
Thanks, man.
All right, folks, please leave us a voicemail. Let us know what you're thinking. 208-402-4915 is the number. I love the comments that are coming in, that were coming in today. Some folks, some of you I know, some of you I don't know, but love seeing those comments in there. And but please do leave us a voicemail. 208-402-4915. We've got IdahoSignal.live is also the place for you to listen to us when you are just out in the fields or You don't want to use as much data streaming the video. You can just listen to us by audio. It's on a loop. IdahoSignal.live. And then yesterday, Senator Brian Lenny decided to go outside to check out what was going on in the Capitol. So we're going to leave you with that image, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Only wanted one time to see you laughing. Only want to see you laughing in the purple rain. Purple rain. Purple rain. Purple rain. Purple rain.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.